Quit hogging all the attention, Jews. The Central High neighborhood, originally known as the West End, was sparsely developed until the mid-1890s when significant construction began. The historic district is significant for its association with the westward expansion of Little Rock, its eclectic blend of architectural styles, and the 1957 Central High desegregation crisis. This program will explain the early history and development of the Central High neighborhood, as well as the architecture of Little Rock Central High School and predominant housing styles. We will discuss imminent threats to historic properties in the district and tools to combat those threats. Multiple neighborhood groups are active in the Central High area, and each one plays an important role. The neighborhood has the unique distinction of being home to the only functioning American high school located in a national historic site. Information will be provided about Central High School's current student body, activities, and facilities. I now want to introduce our distinguished panel tonight. We will start with Rachel Silva. Rachel is Preservation Outreach Coordinator for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program and leads the agency's monthly Sandwiching in History and Walks Through History tours. She is president of the Pulaski County Historical Society and serves on the Arkansas Historical Association Board of Trustees. Rachel enjoys living in North Little Rock's Argenta Historic District.
70.
Okay, our next panelist is Kwendeche. He is a graduate of Little Rock Central High School and Howard University in Washington, D.C. He is an architect with more than 30 years of experience in historic preservation and hospitality design. Kwendeche has been a member of the American Institute of Architects since 1984, and in 2000 he founded PA Architects, an architecture and artworks firm in Little Rock. All right, our third panelist tonight is Vanessa McKuin. Vanessa is a homeowner and resident of the Central High Neighborhood Historic District. She and her husband Tim live with their dog Jack in a rehabilitated circa 1901 colonial revival style house. She serves as president of Central High Neighborhood, Inc., and is also the director of the Historic Preservation Alliance of Arkansas, a statewide nonprofit organization. All right, and last but not least, Principal Nancy Rousseau. She has been the principal for 13 years at Little Rock Central High School, the only functioning high school in America within the boundaries of a National Historic Site. One of her best professional moments came in 2007 when she, along with community leader Virgil Miller, co-chaired the Central High Integration 50th Anniversary Commission for the City of Little Rock. Ms. Rousseau is very proud of the many awards and achievements Central has received due to the school's long-standing legacy of excellence. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn things over to Rachel Silva.
Good evening. What a great crowd. This is exciting. I'm going to stand up here instead of sit down. Oh, fix this real quick. Okay. Little Rock's Central High School neighborhood, originally known as the West End, is largely defined by a momentous event that took place 80 years after that property was originally platted for development. The Centennial Edition, named in honor of our country's centennial celebration, being in 1876, and the largest edition in the neighborhood was platted back in 1877. The early history of the neighborhood's development is significant in its own right and is much lesser known, so my portion of the presentation is going to focus on that aspect. The Central High School Neighborhood Historic District was listed in the National Register of Historic Places back in 1996 for its association with the westward expansion of Little Rock, the 1957 Little Rock Central High School desegregation crisis, and its eclectic blend of architectural styles. The district is roughly bounded, as you can see, by West 12th Street on the north, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive on the east, Roosevelt Road on the south, and Thayer Street on the west. It contains a total of 1,066 properties, including 1 National Historic Landmark, being Central High School, 9 individually listed properties in the National Register, 584 eligible or contributing properties in the district, which means they contribute to the historic significance of the district, and then also 472 ineligible or non-contributing properties in the district. So the ratio of eligible to ineligible properties in the Central High School Historic District is about 55% to 44%. The other 1% being those individually listed properties in the National Register. But if you'll notice on the map, it looks about half and half as it is now, with the blue and green buildings that shows eligible properties in blue and ineligible properties in green. But a lot of white space on that map too, especially over here on the eastern side of the district. And there's not a better way for us to show vacant lots, but out of those ineligible properties, 118 of those and counting are vacant lots. So the message is here, vacant lots do not contribute to the historic significance of the district. Historically, the Central High neighborhood was called the West End because it was literally located on the western edge of the city of Little Rock. So this map is a blown up portion of a map that's called the Perspective Map of the city of Little Rock from 1887. Can you guys see okay? Okay, good.
Are we in the way?
No, I'm talking about the lights up front. Everybody's good? Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so to give you a better perspective on the perspective map, here's High Street, or now known as MLK, and there's Wright Avenue. So you're looking southwest. Everybody got their bearings now, looking at the map? Okay, so as you can see, there wasn't much out there beyond about 15th and High Streets going to the southwest. There wasn't much out there in 1887. Near the turn of the 20th century, the West End consisted of open fields and forest and was very sparsely developed. In fact, the 1890 Guide to Little Rock described the area west of the city limits as, quote, a capital place for a picnic, big enough for half the families of town to go at once without disturbing each other. And now I'd like to point out a couple landmarks in the neighborhood. The circle that just popped up way out in the distance over there, that's the Rice Bowman House. That was my trivia question. That's now located at 2015 South Battery Street. And this, the second circle, is West End Park, which I'll talk a lot about, now the location of Little Rock Central High School. Our district was constructed about, there it is, about 1870 by Milton L. Rice, a carpetbagger lawyer, a state senator, and president of the Cairo and Fulton Railroad. Rice built an imposing Gothic Revival-style house known as Oak Grove on a 12-acre estate about 1 mile west of the Little Rock city limits at that time. Rice left Little Rock about 1880, and his home was later acquired by real estate developer H.A. Bowman. Bowman platted the upscale Oak Terrace addition, which was laid out around the Flower Garden, or the median, in the 2000 block of South Battery Street. And although it's been altered from its original appearance, the Rice Bowman House still stands at 2015 South Battery. Only a few scattered homes existed in the West End up until the mid to late 1890s, when significant construction began at that time. However, Little Rock residents were enticed to visit the West End beginning in 1885, when the West End Park opened at the end of the streetcar line. So you can see that's a little bit closer view of the West End Park from that perspective map, showing it. Here it says West End Park. You can see a large pavilion type structure, and then over here behind it says bicycle track on the far west side of the park. On May 16, 1885, the Little Rock Street Railway Company opened West End Park at the end of its 9th Street line. And I'll highlight, there you go, So you can see where modern day streets are, where the streetcar line went, are the lines in red, and then West End Park is highlighted in red. The 9th Street line was one of 4 lines in the streetcar system at that time. It began at 15th and Chester. It ran west on 15th to High or Martin Luther King. So you can see here it comes on 15th, and it hits High or MLK. And then it would break off at 14th or now Daisy Bates and head to the west for about 6 blocks where it reached West End Park. But that was just a branch line that came over to the park. The main line continued north on High Street all the way up to 9th, where it turned to the east and went back toward downtown. So that's why it was called the 9th Street line. Interestingly, several of the various streetcar companies' officers, including men like H.G. Alice, H.P. Bradford, Howard Adams, W.B. Worthen, and John B. Jones, later became involved with the residential development of the West End. Surprise, surprise. Because you see, West End Park provided a much-needed recreational site for the citizens of Little Rock, and its presence made people want to come out to the end of the streetcar line and look around, where all those lots would soon be offered for sale. West End Park covered 6 blocks from 14th or Daisy Bates to 16th, and from Park Street over to Jones on the west. The park was densely wooded, which is very apparent from this 1890 photograph. West End Park boasted a large pavilion for dancing, refreshment stands, a bicycle track, roller coaster, and even a lake for boating, which is what you see here. If you can see him, that's the man right there in the boat. And that's probably the best picture I've found of West End Park at that time. So, admission to the park was usually 25 cents for adults and 15 cents for children. From all accounts in the Arkansas Gazette, West End Park was a hit as soon as it opened. The park was especially popular on Sunday afternoons when music was provided by the Little Rock Band. And during the heat of the summer, the streetcar company promised to keep the park open late for, quote, the accommodation of those who wish to pass the hot nights out in the suburbs. This advertisement appeared in the Arkansas Gazette on June 28, 1885. It announced a grand 4th of July celebration at the West End Park, free of charge during the day. Festivities started at 3 p.m. with a reading of the Declaration of Independence and went on to include fireworks, music, dancing, and refreshments. The first amateur baseball games were played at West End Park in 1893. In 1894, a baseball field and a grandstand were built on the west side of the park. And this became the home field for the Little Rock Baseball Association, and later the city's first minor league baseball team, the Little Rock Travelers. West End Park's field was also used for Major League spring training camps. The grandstand was rebuilt in 1915 and named after Judge William Kavanaugh, who died in February of that year. Kavanaugh had been president of the Southern League since 1903, and he'd been a big supporter of the Travelers. Kavanaugh Field was the home of the Travelers until 1932, when Ray Winder Field opened. Quigley Stadium, built in 1936 by the WPA, now occupies the site of Kavanaugh Field. This is a page from Cambridge landscape architect John Nolan's Report on a Park System for Little Rock, Arkansas, which was published in 1914. Now, some of Nolan's plans never came to fruition, but this plan for the West End Park site that he drew up shows you kind of the general lay of the land at that time. The baseball park was over here on the far northwestern corner of the site, and this area was labeled lawn on the east side. That was largely just undeveloped forest. After the streetcar company opened Forest Park in Pulaski Heights in 1904, which you heard all about if you were here at the ADN's program on Hillcrest, it sold West End Park to the city of Little Rock. The sale was negotiated in 1907 for $30,000, which the city finally paid in 1913. However, the park grounds outside the stadium, so on that eastern side of the park, they were rarely used after 1912 and they were not maintained. In 1922, a portion of the park grounds was reestablished as Civitan Park, but that was short-lived because, as you all know, in 1927, the new Little Rock Senior High School was built on the east side of the former West End Park property. Park Street, so named because it was the park's eastern boundary, serves as a reminder of the area's past. I mentioned earlier that investors in the various streetcar companies eventually developed much of the West End. The West End Land and Improvement Company owned several tracts of land in the neighborhood, and two of its officers, Adams and Worthen, who are both names appear on that ad, Howard Adams at the top and W.B. Worthen, they were also involved with the street railway. In 1890, the company advertised the sale of 600 choice resident lots in Worthen and Brown's addition, which is located just beyond the western boundary of the historic district today. The ad touts the area's beauty and convenience, with most homes within a 10-minute streetcar ride to the center of the city. The ad also reads, "Pure air, nature at its best, forest trees, springs and glens, lots sold on monthly payments, $100 to $300 each." As development took off at the turn of the 20th century, the frequency of these real estate ads increased. The April 1st, 1906 edition of the Arkansas Gazette showed real estate dealers Raleigh and Morris advertising several properties in the West End, including 1411 Park Street. It said, quote, "Neat 5-room cottage with fruit trees, concrete walks, $1,600. The terms were $200 cash down and $20 a month. Northeast corner 16th and Summit, immediately on the 15th streetcar line, finished in exquisite taste and has mantles, city water, sewer, and bath. Concrete walks and curbing laid, $6,000 for that one. 2318 Schiller, neat little cottage home, $1,750, $100 cash down and monthly payments." Most buildings in the neighborhood were constructed in one of two time periods, either between 1900 and 1915 or between 1920 and 1930. And as you can tell, those real estate developers were really encouraging people to buy and giving them pretty cheap terms on their deal. The West End was a solid middle-class neighborhood. Railroad employees lived next to preachers, barbers, attorneys, physicians, teachers, businessmen, mail carriers, cooks, maids, bookkeepers, and grocers. The cost of homes in the neighborhood in the early 20th century ranged from $2,000 or less for a modest wood frame house, such as the one at 1415 South Park, to between $5,000 and $7,000 for a larger 2-story home on Summit, Marshall, Wolf, or Battery Streets, like the W.E. Lennon House at the corner of 16th and Summit. And these property values remained pretty stable until at least the mid-20th century. A 1940 real estate survey indicated that property values in the West End were pretty similar to those in Pulaski Heights, with the exception of that highest bracket of homes that were worth $20,000 and up. That wasn't the case in the West End. That only happened in the additions in the Heights like Edge Hill and Prospect Terrace. Most homes in the West End were owner-occupied, and people lived in the same house for at least 10 years, which had a positive impact on property values as well as the neighborhood's overall appearance. Historically, the West End was an economically and racially mixed neighborhood. Although the majority of neighborhood residents were white, there were a significant number of black residents. And this map was put together by Dr. Jess Porter at UALR and shows the racial distribution by block in 1900 around the West End. The green lines on West 8th, that's at the top and kind of beyond the historic district, just to show you where we are. The green line at the top and the green line here is South Denison Street. Those indicate blocks that were 70 to 89% black, and the orange lines, which you can see a lot more orange lines, on West 9th, 11th, 12th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and high, or MLK, indicate blocks that were 50 to 69% black. So what does that mean? That means although there were areas that had higher concentrations of black residents throughout the neighborhood, there were no blocks in this area that were in the 90 to 100% black by block category, meaning it wasn't completely segregated by race. Now, it wasn't completely integrated either. I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture, but Little Rock City directories and census records all support that. In the early 20th century, whites and blacks lived side by side in some parts of the West End. The early history of the West End neighborhood, whose current centerpiece, Little Rock Central High School, is such an important part of our nation's collective consciousness about integration and race relations, also provides an interesting perspective on the westward expansion of Little Rock and the character of a middle-class neighborhood in the early 20th century. Now, our next presenter, let me get you set up. Are you going to stay there? Okay. Let's test it out. There we go.
Good evening. My part of the presentation deals with the historic district, the school, a little bit, the historic district as a whole, from somewhat of an architectural standpoint, but I'm looking at it, you'll see that I'm not dealing with so much the styles and the different types of architecture. There's so many different styles. I have some examples. I want to give just an overview of how I see it. I grew up in this neighborhood. This is my high school. I still live in this neighborhood. And I have some thoughts and sort of aspirations, and I sort of subtitle or caption my presentation, Then and Now and the Near Future. What is it that we need to be looking forward to in terms of the sustainability of this community in years ahead? I don't want to be here 10 years if I'm alive, and to be given or to listen to a presentation on, well, why did we lose the status? Why did the historic status? How did it go away? You know, we had demolitions, and nothing happened, but we lost it. So I hate to be in that type of situation. So Little Rock Central High School, Principal Rousseau's office is right there. I was a student there. She was not the principal at the time. I can't remember from '67 who the principal was. Not Jess Matthews, not, but anyway, I was in that office.
That'd be a good trivial question.
Yeah, I was in that office at least 3 times. Non-academic reasons. The components of the historic district. You have the Magnolia Mobile Service Station. This was part of the story. Students used to hang out for the students, and as well during the period of historical significance, the press and other folk would congregate at this station. It was the first visitor center to the historic district. This is the new visitor center. It's on the northeast corner. At one time, it was another trivia question. It was a florist at that location. Tipton and Hurst is at that corner. Okay. The original Tipton and Hurst. Commemorative Gardens. This is a 2001 addition to the historic district. Michael Warwick and Aaron Hussey were the sculptors. You have the Ponder's Drugstore. And I have a little narrative. The near future envisions the restoration and renovation of the Ponder's Drugstore as a food, beverage, bakery venue, similar to the relaxed environment of a community bakery or Boulevard Bread. We have many tourists who come to this site. I see them, they're wandering around, wanting to know where can they get a Coke or a sandwich, and they seem confused, and we really need to work on getting that Ponder's Drugstore redeveloped. I don't know who the owner is, I don't care, but the emphasis should be making this significant place a component of the significance of the district. And that's something we need to work on. As far as jobs, always jobs, economy, economic growth are important. This could be a good place for students who are wanting to get into business. They could have part-time jobs or whatever. So it's important that we work towards the restoration of the Pondicherry Drug School. Quigley Stadium, named after Earl Quigley, the coach from 1914 to 1935. And my trivia question was about Raleigh Johns. He actually lived in the stadium. I don't know if he was the only one that lived in that stadium, but that was significant at that time. They closed the school for his memorial. He announced that he had come down with cancer. The entire school was closed. They gave him a tribute, and he was well known at that time, well respected. Another component of the district, and I'll get to the map, is Park Central Little Rock. Through the efforts of Grace Blagden and Dr. Patricia McGraw, the houses in front of, there are actually 5 houses in front of Central High School that are in the process of becoming part of the historic landmark district. It's in Congress now. It's a process that is underway to include these houses on the east side of Park to be part of the district, of the historic landmark. This one house, 1419, is also part within that group. It is in process of being restored, renovated in terms of documentation. It's ongoing. The city of Blue Rock owns this house. They want to make it into a residential unit. One other house is 1421. This is a house that Dr. Patricia McGraw has. For the 2007 50th anniversary, she insisted that her house be completed. She calls it the Washington Heritage House, and that's one of the historic photos of the troops in front of her house, which was used in the lattice work, which was not there before, was used as a basis of creating new lattice work on the house that was renovated in 2007. Rachel talked about the streetcar. I'm taking it a step further. We have an excellent river rail system. Why not follow the same tracks? I'm sorry, go back. Why not follow the same tracks that were original streetcar in front of West End Park, 9th Street, and have an extension? Someone's saying, who's going to pay for that? Well, we'll deal with that. I have a suggestion at the end, but it's feasible. Feasible in that the tracks are still there. The tracks are still embedded. This is a photo that I took in 2007 at the corner just in front of Pondicherry Drug School where you make that turn. The tracks are just 3 inches below the surface of Park Street. I'm not saying they would use the same tracks, but the matter of the fact is we have to create it. I believe we need to create or enhance the district to make it as original, as exciting, as inviting as possible to heritage tourists. So the tracks are there. They may not use them, but let's think of the idea. I mean, it's just an idea. This is a map similar to the map Rachel. Comments about what my thoughts about the overall district. For one, I really think that we all as a community should really get behind the Southwest Trail. If you don't know what that is, go on Facebook and you'll see very detailed description of the Southwest Trail. That is to be a bike trail from Garland County, Hot Springs to Little Rock. It's going to go along the abandoned tracks, Rock Island Rail tracks that are there now. The tracks are not there, but the space is there. It's also important to have this Southwest Trail as a means to link the historic district with other bike trails, sublinking along Daisy Bates to Main Street. If I'm on Main Street in south of Maine, I can take a bike all the way to the Southwest Trail in Little Hot Springs if I wanted to. Other linkages would be important for that Southwest Trail. Also, some of you may know that there's an industrial zone. It's not within the district, but it affects us from an environmental standpoint. The fact that we have a Greenfield, we have the Greenfield site, potential Greenfield site, where the city bus station used to be and the Kodak. I grew up in this neighborhood. There's a Kodak plant where they put the Silva emulsion, they just dumped it out into, it's still there, it's all there. Those buildings are there, nothing's happened. So it's an impact, environmental impact on the livelihood of this district. Good things about this district, we have the South Summit Street block that Jennifer Carmen and Donna Thomas have developed, an excellent example of what could happen throughout the whole district. We have the James Mitchell School, which is currently for sale, but it's still there. It's still a viable sort of resource for redevelopment as in some function that would benefit the overall community. We also have the State Fairgrounds. It's going to be there. Let's take advantage of the potential for collaborating with the year-round activities that are occurring. It's right next to our site. We also have the Sunset neighborhood. Tom Fennell in the audience did an excellent sort of study of the South Sunset Terrace in the Sunset neighborhood. It has great potential as a collaborative partner with the neighborhood. We also have Arkansas Children's Hospital. They seem to be just taking over and taking over and taking over. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but let's work with them. Let's, as a district, see how we can work together and come up with some viable sort of solutions to the issues that we have. Then as Baptist College as well. Baptist College has grown tremendously in the last few years, so let's work with them. The Wright Avenue corridor, probably the only business district corridor through this historic district, also needs to be looked at in a way that it can help sustain and also enhance the growth of this district. And Flower Park. I have another photo of Flower Park. This is right next to the Rice Bowman, right in front of the Rice Bowman house. It's not, you know, as a kid I played football on that. Never knew it was a garden there. And it should be. It should be a formal flower garden. I think that's important. One house, again, I'm not trying to show each type of style of architecture, but this is just one that's located on 16th Street. That's a before shot. I'll go back. That's a before shot. And Howard Gardner, some of you may have known Reverend Howard Gardner. He did tremendous work in creating a center for kids to enhance this neighborhood, and they've named this center after him. I think it's now owned by Baptist College. It's a child care center. This house, the E.N. Pettit House, I put this in because it's a good example of the latest good work that I've seen happening in this district. It's just maybe a week ago that they completed this work. I don't know anything about it. I know there's someone signed in front. He may be in the audience, but congratulate him that he was part of that work. But I think it's a very good example of what can be done in this neighborhood. Baptist College, again, to give sort of a plug for them in terms of collaborating with them as a partner in the enhancement to this district. Flower Park. Flower Park, this is how it looks today. And then there's one good thing, the Wright Avenue Neighborhood Association have had movies in the park. They actually were finalists in a national award by NUSA for the work to create this Movies in the Park event at that location. But my thought would be, let's take it further and make a formal garden out of it. On the west side, you have the Max F. Meyer House, and on the east side, you have the Rice Bowman House. This photo is from 2006, I believe. The Pearson Robinson House, this is the governor's house, called the governor's house. Actually, 5 Arkansas governors lived in this house. It's at 1900 Marshall Street. It also had Joe T. Robinson, who was a senator, also lived here. So these are the governors who lived in that house different periods of time. I didn't want to write down all the information, but you can look it up. The Charles Clary Waters House. This is a recent photo just a few days ago. The photo that's, this is a National Register property. Actually, the photo that's in the write-up is much nicer. So things have not happened. It's threatening. It's unfortunate. Again, I have no idea who the owner of this property is, but we have to go through some efforts to approach and to plan and to assist in the preservation of this particular property and all properties that are threatened throughout the district. The Charles Dunaway House, just another example of a style, a craftsman style that's within this district. You have the Whitney A. Hart House. It's a prairie style house in the corner of 1868 South Summit. It looks pretty much the same today. This is a photo from 2006. It looks pretty much the same today, but you know, who knows what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years if we don't continue to help in sustaining the quality of the finishes and the integrity of the structure of these properties. Again, through the work of Jennifer Carmen and Donna Thomas, the South Summit Street development is a good example of what can be done. It's both sides of the street. I didn't have a wide-angle camera, so I just took the liberty of taking one side. This is the west side of the street. The east side is quite as developed and interesting as well. Mitchell School. Mitchell School had its history. It was a sort of composite of several different architects over the years. You know, Charles Thompson was involved in this bit, and then this was added later, and it went north and south and east and west. And it's now looking similar to this. It's still in very good shape. It's for sale. It has gone through different stages of how we can transform this into senior citizen housing, assisted living housing. It's been going back and forth. Personally, I think it would be an excellent art institute, similar to PS1. MoMA in New York City has PS1 in Queens, Jamaica, Queens. It's identical in terms of the layout where each of the classrooms are a gallery. So look at PS1, MoMA Museum of Modern Art, PS1, and look at Mitchell School, and maybe that could be a use for that. So that's Mitchell. Here's one house that's threatened as well. This house is called the Poe Patterson House. I have information about the Poe family. I just didn't write it, but the Patterson family, significant in that T.E. Patterson was a Little Rock School Board member during the 67, or shortly after the 60, well, no, I'm sorry, in 1967. He was a school board member, T.E. Patterson. His wife was an author. She also taught. Ruth Patterson, she authored a book called Seed of Sally Goodman. This house is owned by a private individual. The city have not put so much pressure. The porch is gone. This roof area is still damaged. I want to get to how we can get this fixed, but it's just an example of many different houses, properties within this district that are in dire need of help. This is one we lost. This is the birthhouse of Milton Crenshaw, the Tuskegee Airman, on 19th and Denison. I had met Mr. Crenshaw before he left to Atlanta. His daughter passed in Atlanta. He was quite fond of the idea of getting the house listed on the National Register and getting it restored. He actually went ahead and took out the carport, and it might have exposed it did expose the siding to code enforcement, so they wrote him up about the siding where the carport had been at that time. But through a decision made by his daughter, this is what I'm told, she decided to have the house demolished. It was a shock, but I'm saying for the next house and the next house, let's make a better effort to create a database, talk amongst ourselves, find out what the status. I know we go to the city and we see what the demolition list indicates, but let's look beyond the demolition list. Let's sort of make a stronger effort. If we're concerned about preserving these structures, we need to make a better effort to sort of look at what's next door and around us as far as what we can do to avoid this from happening again. Now, in the near future, you ask all these near future ideas, well, are you going to pay for it? And this is far flung. You might see this far flung. I don't. I believe that through I believe through crowdfunding, and that's the new social media phenomena, that we can promote this district to the world. And we can identify structures like the Crenshaw House and say, hey, we need X amount of dollars to restore this house. Someone in the world might say, that's a great idea. I'm going to give a few thousand for that. I'm not going to give up on that idea of crowdfunding. Locally, we have for Valley Little Rock, Ellen Fennell and Tom Fennell have an excellent page on Facebook. It gives a running history of, running sort of record of what's out there now. So that's one aspect of identifying what's out there. Go to Forgotten Little Rock on Facebook. You'll enjoy what you see there. Property tax allocation. I look at my Pulaski County property tax form, and I see I'm paying for library and for I got to pay it, so I don't really know. I don't care what I'm paying for. I got to pay it, but we are paying for different things that are needed for funding. So we can look at, and this said, notwithstanding the legal and social and political issues, especially private property, but property tax allocation might be something that we can fund for these at-risk historic properties. Constitutional amendment. I talked to the state senator and said, listen, you know, the Arkansas Scholarship Lottery goes for scholarships for students. It's a great idea. Why not have some of that money go for preservation, historic preservation for oppressed communities and whatever? Or we gotta have a constitutional amendment. Okay, well, let's work on that. You know, why not? It creates jobs. You know, the scholarships, even though it's a great idea, it doesn't create jobs. But when there's people who are playing the lottery, you know that X amount of dollars are going to go to preservation, and then the result also could mean jobs for craftspersons and others. The last item is not so new. It's like Habitat for Humanities, but they're not new structures. Cadre, I'm willing, I saw my brother out here, we do work with our hands. I know how to do woodwork. If there's a house that needs a raft to put up, why not go out there? If the lumber's donated, why not get a group of people and say, this weekend we're going, like a barn raising, but it's in our own community that we deal with, even though it's a private property. So what? We need to just do some drastic measures to help save our properties from destruction. And the last one is sort of personal, and that while at Central High School, I was a member of the Draftsman Society. And that's me. And I'm saying that, and this is really directed to Principal Rousseau in a way that, you know, let's think about creating a high school for architecture, as they do in many cities throughout this country, and as a means to attract the youth early on who might have an aspiration, but they have no sort of direction. And it could help in the long run. Maybe beyond our lifetime, but at least gives a heads up to young people who are out there in high school who have no clue as far as what they want to do. And I get a lot of parents saying, well, my child wants to be an architect, and I try to help them, and I go through the process, but they're in 11th grade, 12th grade, and they get stuck. And I also visit architectural schools, and most of those students have no previous knowledge of architecture, even drafting. Drafting is not a dirty word. We all have to draw. We all have to graphically indicate what we have in mind. So thank you very much.
Quite a few Central High neighborhood residents in here. Especially want to point out so I'm president of the Central High Neighborhood Inc., one of the 3 neighborhood organizations in the area. Chris Davies is our vice president back there, and our immediate past president, and treasurer Joyce Matthews is here. I don't think I'm missing anybody else, but thank you guys for being here. So how do I switch this over? Dealt with that first. It's okay. Oh. It's just like a regular computer. So my husband Tim and I moved, are both native Arkansans, and when we moved back to Little Rock after some time in Brooklyn, New York, we settled in the Governor's Mansion Historic District and really loved living in the historic district. When we decided to buy our first home, we talked a lot about it, and we wanted to be in a historic house, but we also wanted to take a property that was not in use currently, that was vacant, and put it back into use. And so in 2008, we took a tour with Paul Dodds, who's here, and fell in love with a boarded up colonial revival house at 15th and Summit. The house was in the process of foreclosure and it wasn't on the market just yet. And so we kept looking around, but we kept coming back to the Central High neighborhood, because the more we got to know about it, the more we came to realize just what a really special place it is. It's a place where there are discernible layers of history and where you can pick up clues about the past just from looking around. The carefully graded streets indicate where the streetcar used to run, and if you look really carefully, you can see some indications of actual former trolley poles still exist. The history of West End Park's connection to development of Little Rock as a modern city at the turn of the century really fascinated us. Another thing that attracted us to the Central High neighborhood is its history of diversity. As Rachel mentioned, it was historically home to people who of varied levels of income, varied races, and varied occupations. While many other neighborhoods in the city have a history of exclusive covenants, the Central High Neighborhood Historic District seemed to have a more inclusive past, and that was really fascinating to us. The architecture, of course, that Kwendeche has shown us, and of course the stunning design of the National Historic Landmark Central High School, plus the school's significance as a powerful symbol of civil rights, really kept drawing us in. We love that the school is a living, breathing landmark and a place that's still revered by residents as well as tourists and students. Even after several years in our neighborhood, when I walk our Jack dog, we stop by the school and have to be in awe of the beautiful building. We finally bought that colonial revival house in May of 2009 and started to rehabilitate it. I started attending neighborhood meetings. I'm an organizational person, and quickly learned that there are actually 3 neighborhood associations in the area that are actively working to preserve this neighborhood. Capitol Hill Neighborhood Historic District, Association, Central High Neighborhood Inc., which I mentioned, also known as CHINNY. I'll try not to use acronyms, but sometimes I do that. And the Wright Avenue Neighborhood Association, or WANA. In preparation for this program, this is where they are. So Capitol Hill's up in the north, Central High is kind of in the middle, and Wright Avenue is south. In preparation for this program, I tried to talk to people who've been around a lot longer than I have, and institutional memories and great pride for the area. Probably everybody knows Annie Abrams. The histories of these organizations are largely held, I found, in the memories of the people who helped found the organizations and who've been involved for years. It would be really great to have a written history, and if anybody knows of one that I just couldn't find, let me know. But of the neighborhood associations themselves, but that's a project for another day, for sure. So the Capitol Hill, here's just a very brief history of each one. What I could find. The Capitol Hill Neighborhood Association, which was founded in the mid-90s, and the group was instrumental in getting the city's Park Street Alert Center, now called the Central High Neighborhood Resource Center, opened, and improving Fletcher Park. Capitol Hill partnered with the city of Little Rock to build, and Arkansas Children's Hospital, to build a fence and a playground and playground equipment and picnic tables. If you go by there any day when the weather's nice, you'll see just how much of an asset this is to the community and a place where people gather. The Central High Neighborhood Inc., or CHINNY, was founded in the early 1980s to develop public policy to be supportive of the neighborhood and its preservation. CHINNY was supportive in attaining the National Register Historic District status in 1996, and in helping organize the Central High School Museum Inc., which is the group that helped develop the museum, the first museum in Magnolia Station. In the early 90s, Cheney was also involved in an urban forestry pilot program to plant trees and maintain the neighborhoods. One of the neighborhood's great assets are mature trees. Cheney members were very involved in saving the landmark West Side Junior High, which of course is down here, in the early 2000s after it was abandoned. It's now apartments and medical offices, which is wonderful. And in 2010, Cheney advocated for passage of a design overlay district, which I'll talk about a little bit more. The Wright Avenue Neighborhood Association was founded in the early 1990s to demand improvement to the community. And Juana sought to be a voice for the neighborhood and also to empower residents. The group was instrumental in getting the Neighborhood Resource Center on Wright Avenue opened the first time and then reopened. And did a lot of cleanup work in its early years. Kwendeche mentioned the movies in the park, a lot of fun events like that. Juana advocated keeping the Mitchell Elementary School open, but after the school district eventually closed it, the organization actually acquired the building and later sold it to a developer. While plans right now to turn the building into residential units are stalled, the building is currently for sale. More recently, the organization has really trying to work toward developing a plan for the area to foster redevelopment on Wright Avenue, which is the commercial strip, and in the residential neighborhood. An application for the last round of Jumpstart grants through Metro Plan was not successful, but I hear that the group is actually working on a technical assistance grant from the American Planning Association, so fingers crossed. Today, the organizations struggle a little bit to maintain active participation. There's an aging population, but a real desire, I think, for neighborhood organizations to be active in the communities again. I think we could all benefit from some better organization, from better political connections, and a lot more collaboration. So one thing, in addition to geography, that kind of links all of our organizations is the issue of disinvestment over the long term. The Central High School Neighborhood Historic District has more properties that have been designated unsafe and vacant, this is a city designation, by the City of Little Rock than any other historic district in Ward 1. So you see Central High is down here, Governor's Mansion, Dunbar, the very new Dunbar historic, and all of these little dots are vacant and unsafe properties. The National Register designation is honorary only, so many of you know that it doesn't protect against demolition or other alterations that can chip away at the integrity of the neighborhood. So I mentioned the Design Overlay District. This is just a little map with some of the various landmarks around the neighborhood to kind of orient you to what's what and what is where. So the Central High School Neighborhood Historic District, part of it, also has a local ordinance design overlay district, which is intended to ensure that the historic character of the neighborhood is maintained. But the district mainly addresses things like building scale and how far new construction should be set back from the street. The initial hope of the Central High Neighborhood Inc., Cheney, was to get a local ordinance district like MacArthur Park that actually has some teeth and some protections passed to include the entire National Register Historic District. But consensus was not achieved among property owners, and eventually the city adopted a design overlay district in just part of the neighborhood. Like the National Register designation, this has pretty minimal protections against, no protections actually, against demolition or incompatible alterations. So this is a map of demolitions between 2002 and 2012 in and around the district. All of the little shaded in black areas are the demolished buildings. The gray areas are standing buildings. So you can see there's quite a bit of demolition that's taken place in that 10 years. Several years ago, Cheney put together a do not demolish list as kind of a wish list that gave to the city, basically including, at the time, all of the buildings that were contributing to the historic district and were unsafe and vacant or that were headed that way. UV listing, unsafe vacant listing, is often the beginning of the end for these buildings. At last count, there were 65 contributing properties to the National Register Historic District that were also on the unsafe and vacant list. Enough that continued demolition puts the historic district designation in jeopardy. Since that last tally, some of the properties on that list have been rehabilitated, but several have also been lost. Though the Neighborhood Stabilization Program was a well-intended program where the city got federal funding to address vacant and foreclosed houses within the area, there were several properties that were purchased that just weren't good fits for the program. And thanks to neighborhood advocates and city staff, now 2 homes that are unsafe and vacant have recently been sold out of the program so that they can now be redeveloped. So there is some positive happening. This is the same house, interior and exterior. Recently, advocates have been working really hard to look at alternatives for demolition of properties that could be returned to use. There's even a Stop the Demolitions Little Rock Facebook page, started by area resident and property owner Jennifer Carmen, who Kwendeche also mentioned. There's been a small amount of infill development in the form of new housing through public funding. And the district has seen an uptick in private investment in the past several years, in large part due to passage of the 2009 Arkansas Rehabilitation Tax Credit, an investment incentive that can be used by both investors and historic homeowners. Between November of 2010 and December of 2014, these credits, the state and federal rehabilitation tax credits, helped leverage almost $2.8 million in private investment throughout the historic district. Paul Dodds, who is here, has rehabbed several properties using state and federal tax credits and home funds for affordable housing. Jennifer Carmen and Donna Thomas have completed rehabilitation of 10 vacant properties in the Wright Avenue area and the Central High neighborhood area since 2010, both using the state and federal rehabilitation tax credits. All of these properties are now occupied. Many other property owners have made substantial improvements into their own homes or rehabilitated properties for rental or to sell. So the basis, this all is important, the basis of eligibility for a property owner to receive the tax credits, the rehabilitation tax credits, is listing in the National Register of Historic Districts, individually or in a historic district and contributing to a historic district. A district must have more contributing structures, which are properties that were built within the period of significance and that retain significant historic features, than non-contributing structures, properties that have been altered or demolished. Like Rachel mentioned, those empty lots don't count. If that balance shifts so that 51% of the properties are, so less than 51% of those properties are contributing, the district could lose its historic status. And without that designation, property owners would lose access to the rehabilitation tax credits. And $2.8 million is pretty significant investment to be leveraged by those tax credits. The tax credits are an important incentive to encourage investment in historic buildings, but of course they're not a silver bullet and they can't be used on every project. We have more than our fair share of vacant lots, many of which spend most of the year, thanks to our nice warm climate here, as overgrown weed lots. Much of the rental property in the district is owned by out-of-town landlords or property owners that do not have the resources to put into improving their properties, or that just don't. We have a largely elderly population, and unemployed or underemployed property owners mean that there are a lot of properties that aren't well maintained. Another issue is that all three neighborhoods face is the lack of planning for the area. Kwendeche mentioned this, that it seems like development and implementation of public policies as well as public investments in infrastructure and in housing, and the prioritization of resources seems often to be done without clear goals or vision for the future of the district. As Wright Avenue's efforts show, there is definitely a desire and a need for developing neighborhood plans with clear goals. The district is largely residential in character. There are a couple of distinct commercial areas and a number of institutions, including these up here, and several churches throughout the area. I think it's worth mentioning that in addition to the neighborhood associations, these organizations really impact the surrounding neighborhoods. Central High faculty and students both have partnered with Cheney on neighborhood cleanups. There's always a great showing among students to welcome runners during the marathon, a really great partner. The National Park Service, of course, is a great partner as well. Staff attends neighborhood meetings and participates in these programs too. And there's a lot of interest in doing tours and outreach and education in the neighborhood, not just to people who come and visit. Arkansas Children's Hospital has been helpful with a number of projects. I mentioned the improvements to Fletcher Park, but Arkansas Children's Hospital has also helped to fund playground equipment and other improvements to Centennial Park in the Central High neighborhood. While a lack of investment in the neighborhood is a problem, on the flip side, development pressure is also a concern. Sometimes the growth of institutions creates tension between the neighborhood and the institutions. Arkansas Children's Hospital and Arkansas Baptist College both have master plans that focus primarily on the needs of the institutions, sometimes to the detriment of the surrounding neighborhood. Insensitive growth of the hospital and the college in that neighborhood is a great concern to the residents. Central High School, too, needs additional space. I think that you've probably seen those pictures. There are those portable classrooms that I know are not suitable for kids. But Central High is landlocked on 3 sides by houses, and some of those are contributing to the National Register Historic District. There's some more pictures. Churches always seem to be looking for more parking. That's like a universal truth, right? And it's no different in the Central High neighborhood. I don't mean to be critical of the institutions themselves, who all do great work and provide important services, but a neighborhood is kind of like an ecosystem, I think. And the urban fabric just outside of those boundaries is pretty fragile, as we can see. And care needs to be taken to accomplish those institutional goals, which are wonderful assets to our community, while being mindful of the neighbors. Kwendeche said that we all need to work together. A couple of other issues, like nearly every neighborhood south of 630, we have an image problem. Central High neighborhood faces the challenge of negative perceptions perpetuated by a lack of knowledge about the neighborhoods around Central High, and sometimes based on a 20-year-old documentary made about gangs in Little Rock. I know, but you have to say what people are thinking sometimes. I'm always surprised by how many people I talk to, probably not in this room, because there were a lot of Central High grads, but who've never spent any time, spent much, if any time, in the Central High Neighborhood Historic District. There has long been a trend that I've observed of people making disparaging remarks about neighborhoods south of 630. I've witnessed it many times, people who have been longtime residents of Little Rock, or people who have just arrived, being told, you don't want to live south of 630. Many of those people saying those things are actually unfamiliar with the neighborhood. So I invite you to come and actually see it and spend some time there. Another matter of perception that our neighborhood faces is the concern of gentrification. The worry exists among some current residents, and I've observed that anxiety about change definitely drives not only the actions of individuals, but also policies and decisions made by City Hall about buildings, transportation, infrastructure, and more. In my opinion, the district's history and heritage of diversity is just as important to preserve as the buildings and the houses. Many of us share a vision of revitalization and a redevelopment that incorporates new residents into neighborhoods without displacing long-term residents. I think that it's important for all of us who are involved with promoting redevelopment in Central High to be cognizant and to be sensitive to that matter. Most of the redevelopment that's taking place is in long vacant properties, and the neighborhoods historically did accommodate more density, and I hope that they will again. And I hope that more density brings services like banks and a grocery store to make it better for everybody in the area. Despite the challenges, I am really optimistic about the future of the Central High School Neighborhood Historic District. It, like many of the houses in its boundaries, has strong bones, as they say. The district's important history, distinctive character, central location, fierce proponents are huge assets. In a short time, I've witnessed progress with modernizing outdated demolition policies and redevelopment. This, plus the desire of creative people to live close to the city's core, and the growing appreciation by people throughout the city, as evidenced by this wonderful gathering. And the fact that the area is home to one of the city's top tourism destinations and one of the state's best high schools makes me really excited about the future. The neighborhood groups and the institutions have a very important role to play in continuing to advocate for our area, and we have to work together to ensure that the Central High School Neighborhood Historic District is respected by the decision makers and appreciated by the citizens of Little Rock.
All right, I'm an educator, and we're not supposed to sit this long, so does anybody want to stand up and move around and shake a little bit? Just to, my presentation is not quite as long, and I do not have a PowerPoint, but I like the fact that the school, the background of the school is there as I speak. Actually, I've been principal 13 years, but I was assistant principal for 7, so I have spent 20 years in that building. There's hardly a nook or cranny that I'm not familiar with. The kids don't get to go anywhere to do bad things without finding out. You mentioned the word partnerships, coming together. Obviously, we don't want to lose the historic value of the neighborhood. One of the things that I've gotten to see over the years is the partnership, the collaboration, the coming together of the neighborhood with the school. I want to tell you a couple of stories. You mentioned Grace Blagden, who purchased 3 of the houses across the street from the school, and thankfully before the 50th anniversary got them painted and presentable so that when we had people from all over come to Little Rock, you could look across from the school and not faint. But one of my favorite things about Grace was the day that she walked into my office with one of my students by the collar and informed me that he was trying to cut through her yard to leave school. So she grabbed him by his collar and brought him to my office and stood there with, I wish she were here, because it was the most shocking thing, and the kid didn't even argue with her. So anyway, and bless her heart, she helps me like that. Then I have a neighborhood narc. If you're here, please see me afterwards, because I've never met you. We have golf carts at Central that we purchased to get around, and so he will call me and say, oh, there are 5 kids sitting in a car at 16th and Jones smoking, so the security will go and catch the kids, or they're in a vacant house, no telling what they're doing. But he calls all the time, and we really appreciate this partnership. Of course, you mentioned Inner City Future Net. Not many people know this, but I have a principal's cabinet that I established 2 years into the 2nd year of my tenure. And our special, we embrace the Howards, and yes, I did know Howard Gardner. That was a great loss, but we have continued all these years to support Inner City Future Net, my principal's cabinet, which is an organization that reaches out to the neighborhood and to our community with public service, and they go over to inner city after school and they tutor the kids, they give them their snacks, and every year after the holiday we do a presents for all the kids. We get crayons and books, and it's a wonderful outreach into our community, and I'm really happy that we do that. And of course, the greatest partnership of all came in 1998, and that is the Little Rock Central High School partnership with the National Park Service, which is just absolutely magic. I don't know any other way to say it. I see some of the Park Service staff are here, and we just love each other. It's fabulous. They've done so much for us. For example, right in around 2001-2, when the millage passed of '99, they gave us $1 million, which was then matched by the millage to replace the roof at Central. Interestingly, it cost $2 million to replace the roof, and the cost of the building in 1927 was $1.5 million. And you know, we spent all that money, and the company, I won't disparage them, but they did put our picture up in billboards around town, and you know what? It leaked. So we had to go back and replace the flashing, and that was another $250,000. But the National Park Service also, a former superintendent came over one day and said, "Okay, Nancy, I have $50,000. What would you like us to do for you?" Wow. So we walked all around the building, and guess what? They had taken the reflecting pool out back at some point because it had cracked and it was leaking. So we put the reflecting pool back, which was part of the original architecture. And so the National Park Service has just done great things for us in that way. And then within a year, we had a big fundraiser at Central. The community participated, as well as the school, and we put 10 marble benches out around the reflecting pool, one for each of the Little Rock 9, and the 10th for all the past, present, and future Central High students. So it's really a great area to go and just reflecting pool. And thank you to the National Park Service, who also, and I have to, this amazing partnership. They came over recently. The front doors of Central are dry and cracking, so we're working on a partnership with the school district to replace them this summer. They help us with programs. They brought Harry Belafonte to school for one of the anniversaries. Every year, someone great comes in. The park rangers are at our school every single day doing tours. Today we had some little elementary school kids. They were really cute. And we managed to have these tours in the middle of the day when school is going on, and it's not a problem. The Memory Project, which is something that we're very proud of at Central, it was started by a group of teachers. The lead teacher, George West, he was here. Are you still here, George? Hi. And guess what? Our kids have written 2 books, and they're oral histories, all about issues of civil rights, not just black-white, but civil rights throughout history. Our kids interview people, and we've written 2 books, and of course the National Park Service sells our books across the street. Thank you very much. They help us with teacher education, with grants, student leadership. There's a student leadership group. It's just, these partnerships are so important to the legacy of excellence at Central and to our continuing success as a school. A school cannot stand alone. We've got to have community support, and we just need those houses to all be fixed and remain in good shape so that we can have a very strong partnership. All right, now let's talk about the building. 20 years in that building, there are a lot of issues. It is beautiful. The halls the floors are original, they shine. And I invite every one of you to come at some point. You won't believe how beautiful it is. However, there are many infrastructure issues. If I had known then what I know now, I would have gotten a master's in building facilities. Because honestly, I don't know what I would do. I have a husband, Steve Rousseau, who's here somewhere, who's an architect, who has helped me immeasurably. Because every single day there are issues in the building. And the district has taken the building engineers out of our building, and they keep them at a central location, so everything is a work order now. So if a toilet overflows, or there's an air conditioning problem, you got to do a work order and wait for somebody to come help. And it's very, very difficult in a building that is 87 years young. Our science labs. Imagine doing experiments in chemistry and in physics with 87-year-old labs. But you know what? Guess what high school wins the most awards locally, regionally, nationally in this area? Central High School. So. And you know, I don't know if any of you know this, but in 2009, there's an online college support service called Best Online Colleges. They came out with this, somebody shared this with me recently, 10 incredibly beautiful high schools that put yours to shame. There are 10 listed here. Number 2 is Little Rock Central High School, and 4 of them are in Europe. So this is just, I mean, yes, we need some things, but we're beautiful. Quigley Stadium was built in '36. Our gym is in '51. I can't even have a pep assembly anymore in my gym because with 2,500 children, I don't have enough seats in the gym. The library was built in 1969. We have recently done some renovations to it, and it looks pretty darn good. But eventually that's going to have to be replaced too. When the millage passed, we got Little Rock Central High School was given $14 million. Most of that money went for classroom renovations, carpet, paint. We did get a new air conditioning system. Some of the classrooms we actually divided because we needed more space. And that's when the portables first came to Central High School, because we would move a wing of the school into the portables because it took longer than just, you know, a couple of weeks. Well, guess what? The kids kept coming and coming and coming. When I first came to Central, we had 1,800 children. We now have about 2,500. So we kept adding portables. We now have 21 portables out back. And that is it's also caused a traffic problem and a parking problem because we don't have places for cars. We need a science technology building desperately. We don't have enough computers. Little Rock School District had to get a waiver this year for our testing because we don't have enough computers in the building. And so obviously that's a need that we have. The district recently did a facility study, and they decided that $31 million would take care of us. Try 60. 31 would probably get us a gym and a half, and our gym is really in bad shape. But these are things we have to have. I believe that this state, this city, and this school district have to come together to decide if you're going to keep Central open for perpetuity, because it is not, the district cannot afford to keep up with the infrastructure issues forever. We have created certain, under my I have a bucket list, and we have an alumni association now. Are you a member?
No, I'm not.
Well, you need to be. We have a Tiger Foundation that we recently established, and would you believe in a year and a half's time, we have almost $300,000 that have been given to us. And we have gotten more portable laptop labs. You probably heard it was all over the papers with the restoration of our 1927 Steinway piano. That we're doing things internally as best we can to keep the school beautiful and to keep it updated, but we definitely need help. The school itself is, in spite of whatever else, I'm not going to go into details what's going on with the district, everybody reads the news, but Central High School is shining. I left a lot of material out there for you to look at our test scores and our scholarships and our brags. We have a program for every single child, whether they are at grade level in literacy and math or not. We'll make sure they are. I have some of my teachers here, thank you. I have Stafford and Schaffner and Jones and George West. Thank you for being here. All of you are the mainstay of what makes Central High School such a great place. Thank you. And everyone, please do support the Central High neighborhood. We are members of the Neighborhood Association. Of course, unfortunately, their meetings always seem to come when I have a choir concert. It's tonight. Well, and there's a school board meeting. We're missing that too, thank goodness. This is a great crowd. I've been to a few of these, and this is the biggest one I've ever seen. So thank you all for coming here. Please get the information I left out there on Central High on your way out.